I'm Jen Mall, and welcome to Nurse Connect. I am an RN and a board certified nurse coach. I believe that connecting with others is essential to living a happy and fulfilled life, and that sharing our stories not only helps us to heal ourselves, but also helps others by inspiring hope and optimism. I am so grateful to share stories of these incredible nurses on their journey, and I encourage you to find a way to share yours too. Thanks for listening in. All right, hey everybody, welcome back. This is Jen Mall with Nurse Connect, and I am here with Rachel. Super happy to have you on. And I would love it if you could start out with just introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jen, for having me on. I am so excited to talk about all things creativity and nurse coaching. So my name is Rachel Dick. I am a certified holistic nurse coach. And I have been an RN for about 13 years. And about 2 years ago, I switched paths and became a holistic nurse coach. And in my practice, I focus on helping nurses unlock their creativity. So I have developed a program to help nurses who want to be more creative, who want to express themselves, and perhaps want to tackle artistic and creative projects.
I love this because it's just so unique. And I think, well, myself, but also I think a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the writing and creativity process. So I love how you've kind of set up this program to help. It's not just about the creativity, it's about all the other things that creativity can unlock. So can you share with us a little bit about what your program is to help everybody understand what the kind of work you're doing?
Sure, I would love to. Yeah. So I have always loved writing. I've always been a decent writer. I never really thought of myself as a creative writer, but I've always loved art and I've loved just expressing myself creatively as a child. And I think when I became a nurse, I got really practical and started focusing on, got to be practical, just everything was about, I kind of left that creative piece of me behind a little bit. And so about a year and a half ago, I was introduced to the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And this is a really, really powerful book. And it's all about recovering your creative self and getting back in touch with that inner child and playing more and having fun. And the tool that she uses to help you unlock your creativity is writing. And so basically you sit down every day and you write 3 pages, stream of consciousness journaling. And so when I started doing this program, when I started doing this journaling every single day, I was sitting down and journaling, I started noticing all these like really big shifts. Like I noticed that I was like more clear-headed and I was, it was easier to focus and I was like more creative and just, it even like affected my mood and the way I was feeling. And it just became like a building block of my self-care practice. And I realized as I was doing this program, I thought, like nurses would really benefit from this. And I thought, how can I bring this program to nurses? And so essentially my workshop is basically a 4-month workshop where we use the principles in that book. And it's both a coaching space and a writing space. And so we get together every week in a group space in a really supportive environment and learn how to be more creative. And so I coach you in the group, but you also get to participate in a writing activity and you get to share the writing with the rest of the group, which is also a really, really powerful experience just to be witnessed and to read your writing to a group and see and have that received. So that's the basic structure of the program. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. And I actually just want to back up a little bit because you had mentioned that a couple of years ago, you kind of made this shift into coaching. Are you open to sharing how that happened? Because I think that's a pretty powerful story in itself too.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to. And this totally ties into what I do as a nurse coach. So, yeah, I would love to share that story. So basically, I worked like a pretty traditional orthopedic med-surg job for almost a decade. I really liked it. Was always very involved as a nurse. I was always a union rep and did all sorts of things and really enjoyed my job. I worked at small little community hospital. And basically, I was working through the pandemic as a nurse. It was a pretty stressful time. And I made the choice to speak to the press, to speak to a reporter and express my opinions on the COVID-19 shutdown. And so I wasn't representing my hospital in any
Mm-hmm.
capacity. I was just speaking as an RN, as a nurse who was working through the pandemic and was seeing a lot of the effects that the shutdown was having on the elderly, on children,
Mm-hmm.
just on nurses, and just the toll that COVID was, that the shutdown was taking during COVID. And so a few days after this happened, a few days after I spoke to this reporter, basically I was contacted by my workplace and I was threatened,
Mm.
and I had to endure like a very long HR tribunal, and I had to sit through meetings where I was told that I'm endangering patients and I'm a bad nurse and all these things that I was told, despite being a nurse working through the pandemic, just for like finding the courage to open my mouth and speak up and express my opinion on something that I felt very
Yeah.
strongly on. And so this experience, as you can imagine, was very like harrowing for me.
Yeah.
It was very, I felt very vulnerable. I felt very exposed. When I spoke to that reporter, I was speaking from the heart. I was speaking
Mm-hmm.
my truth. I was practicing my freedom of speech. And then I felt like I was retaliated against for that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like I always had this fear. I've been shy since I was a kid, and I've always had a fear of like expressing myself in some ways. And it was almost like, I was scared a bad thing would happen. And then that exact thing
It
happened.
happened.
Yeah. And so like my fears were kind of confirmed. And this really made me, it really kind of shook me awake, and it kind of
Yeah.
really made me rethink a lot of things. And I thought, I really, I am an opinionated person. I have strong opinions. I like to be able to speak freely. And I thought the only
Mm-hmm.
way that I can do that is if I'm self-employed. And so I started to think outside the box. What else can I do as a nurse where I don't have to be an employee, or I don't have to watch what I
Mm-hmm.
think? I've always wanted to start a podcast. I've always wanted to express myself, and I do think outside the box. And so I thought, I started looking online for holistic nursing things. And then basically, essentially, I came upon the Nurse Coach Collective,
Wow.
got certified as a nurse coach, and then amazingly discovered the Artist's Way. And then that was
Yeah.
part of my healing journey of like figuring out how to express myself again and not feel, shut down and afraid to speak up. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. I think that really helps pull everything full circle because there is this beautiful, well, the healing process in itself is so hard to work through all of that stuff and to have, well, I think, let me back up. So the Nurse Coach Collective in itself for me, I also went through that program and it was such a healing, transformative, cathartic process, just learning to become a coach. But then with your discovery of the Artist Way and developing this workshop for other nurses, I just love that it gives you like an outline. Okay, here are some steps. Here are some really concrete things you can follow. And if you just go through the motions, then that process of healing and of the creativity coming back, like, and all of the beautiful side effects of that, it just kind of naturally starts to happen. And it
Yeah.
seems like that was
Yeah.
your experience.
100%, 100%. And the Artist's Way has 12 chapters, and in some ways
Mm-hmm.
it's structured like almost like a recovery program, like an AA
Mm-hmm.
program with 12 steps. And Julia Cameron herself is part of the recovery community, and there is a parallel
Oh.
there. And the first chapter, so every chapter explores a different theme, and the first theme that we explore is the theme of safety, recovering a sense of
Mm.
safety. And because that's the bedrock for everything else. If you want to be creative, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a speaker, if you want to do things that are scary and vulnerable and creative and out of the box, the first thing you need is this inner sense of safety. And the morning pages create that. That's why they're so magical, because essentially you're creating a space every single day where you get to show up and express yourself without fear of retribution, without fear of
Mm-hmm.
what anyone's going to think. You don't have to have good spelling or grammar. It doesn't have to make sense. You can even throw it in the garbage afterwards. But the point is, you're taking those thoughts that live inside of
Uh-huh.
you in a safe place and you're putting them onto paper. And that builds a
Beautiful.
foundation of safety. So now you can go and be creative and be artistic and be expressive and do all those scary things.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Because I journal, and oh, I have the book. It's sitting
I
right
see it on
there.
your shelf. I've been eyeing it the
And I
whole
have
time.
not dug into it. And we've talked about this, and it was like my step one was buying the book, right? And I do journal. So I'm curious how did you journal before you jumped into this, or was this just something you went full on in?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it's so funny because just today in my morning pages, or I was doing a writing prompt, and now I'm addicted to writing, I say.
Yeah.
And I was writing about my very first journal, and I got my first
Oh,
journal when I was 8 years old. I remember what it looked like. It had pink and orange flowers. It had a
oh,
lock and a key, if you remember those,
yes.
And so like I've been journaling at least since I was 8 years old and couldn't spell
Wow.
very well. And I've always been an on again, off again journaler. And late, before I started the morning pages, it was more on again. Like I
Hmm.
was writing a fair bit, but I could go weeks without writing in a journal.
Okay.
And since I started the morning pages, it's not every single day, but almost every single day. Like I
Yeah.
almost don't go a day without journaling. It's
Yeah.
now like to me like brushing my teeth almost.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I love it. And would you say that it's different than how you journal? Like, I guess that's people always ask me, like, oh, I'm not good at writing. And the way I kind of explain it to them with just journaling is that, if you said it doesn't matter what spelling is, nobody's going to read this. Just literally, if you want to brain dump or do bullet points, like it doesn't need to be perfect. So I'm curious if if it feels different having that structure with the artist way. Focus versus just kind of a traditional, here's how
Yeah.
my day went. What would you say are kind of the main differences there?
Yeah, I love this question because it's so like technical. It's like we're getting to
Yeah.
like the actual like mechanics of like how do I journal? And it's such a good question. And it's like basically there is no right way to journal. Like everyone journals their own way, and you kind of at the end of the day are going to end up finding your own method. I
Yeah.
like to journal with a lot of lists, and I've always been that way. Like just
Mm,
lists of movies I like, lists of
that's
whatever,
fun.
yeah, places I want to go, or like it's just I like to do lists, and lists are a little bit less intimidating.
Yeah.
But what shifted for me when I started doing the morning pages was it actually gave me permission to be more free flow. So she encourages
Oh,
you to really do stream of consciousness. And she says,
okay.
like, if you don't know what to write, just write, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to
Okay.
write. And so you get into this pattern of just going, going, going without stopping.
Yeah.
But I definitely do. So I have like a million journals. I have a little one. I have one in my purse. I have one on my nightstand. I have one on I have 20 on the computer. So it's I think once it becomes like an addiction and you start to
Yeah.
see how beneficial it is, it's like you just realize that there are no rules, and the less rules you have,
Mm.
the less resistance you're going to have to
Oh,
journaling. And so it's like like that's why I tell people like do whatever works for you. Like I say, if you want to put on a timer, put on a timer. If you want to do 3 pages, do 3 pages. If you want to do it on the computer, like just find something that works and let go of the rules, because a lot of us get stuck in our heads because we're like, oh, I'm going to look back on this. I'm going to read this. Is this going to be useful? I'm going to understand whatever. And it's like the main benefit of journaling is the actual journaling. Like you don't even
mm-hmm.
have to look. I don't look back on most of my journals. Occasionally, I have some journals that I look back on because it's like for my business or actual
Mm-hmm.
things that I need. But for the most part, I'm not reading them back, and most of the benefit is happening with that moving the pen across the page. That's
Yeah.
the medicine. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I just love that. And it gives you like that permission to just get started, just do it. Like, don't, because otherwise we get wrapped up in our heads and we're thinking
yeah.
about all of those logistical things, which I think as nurses, we're very good at. We're very good at being, prepared and making sure we have everything just right. And that can be where some of our challenges actually lay, is that we're trying to be too perfect. And when we can't get it right, we don't even want to get started. So
Oh my God,
I love that
100%.
advice. Just jump in and do it. Just right.
Yeah,
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 that's good.
yeah. And
And so how many, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you just reminded me of like, there are unique barriers that nurses face when it comes to
Mm,
journaling. And one of them has to do with the way we do documentation. We're so used to everything has to be factual and correct.
oh
And
my
you know
gosh.
what I mean? And so then when you tell someone to go and journal, like it's just funny how there's unique things that come up for nurses. The HIPAA is a big one, how to navigate HIPAA. And these are all things that we
Yeah.
kind of talk about in the workshop. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is so true because I even, like, I forgot to journal on Sunday. And so I went back today and I updated what I did on Saturday because I felt like I left out
Oh my
things.
God, I love
And
it.
that's kind of that, I don't want to say trauma, but like a little
Yeah.
bit of that bedside thing that where you're like, oh, I missed a omission, I missed something and I got to go back and document it. And it doesn't even need to be that way. I could have just see where it went.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun.
That's that's a fun
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So tell me about, like, in the workshops when you're using the structure of the book. Um, what tends to come up in the sessions when you guys meet as a group? Is it like nursey stuff, or is it life stuff? Or, and then without giving too much away with confidentiality, do you find that having everybody together in a group setting helps process some of the challenges we've experienced?
Yeah, great question. I love the group setting. I think it's super, super powerful just to have more people, especially because the workshop is about storytelling. And so
Mm-hmm.
much of what we're trying to do is to learn to present our story to audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start, in front of a group of 5 or 6 people, but like if you're someone that wants to have a podcast or tell a story or market your business or whatever it is, it all involves standing in front of an audience. And so being witnessed by the group, I think, is 100% like part of the power of the
Mm.
workshop. And then a lot of what comes up for people. So, not everyone, but a lot of the nurses that I work with are entrepreneurs and are starting businesses. Some of them are working bedside, some of them work in other settings. So a lot of them are undergoing a lot of transitions. And
Mm-hmm.
so definitely everything is welcome in the space. If someone is going through something in their business or something in their family, they totally bring that to group. Usually I ask different questions, but a question that I often ask is what's coming up on your morning pages.
Mm.
And, people will say all sorts of different things. It's so interesting. People will say like, oh, I've been so boring lately on my morning pages, and that might be a prompt for me to say, oh, like, have you done something fun? Have you gone on your artist date? Like maybe go horseback riding,
Ah.
like, so just I just kind of like draw out what's coming up on the morning pages. And then sometimes we talk real practical because I like to
Mm-hmm.
give also tools around publishing and editing and how to submit articles to different places. Like sometimes we do a little more, practical stuff, how to organize your journals, like stuff like that, how to navigate HIPAA as a nurse, some of those unique issues that come up for nurses, how to tell your nursing stories, because a lot of what people write about often, not always, but yeah, a lot of times people's nursing stories come out. So there's all sorts of different things that come up, and it's really fun because it's part coaching, emotional processing, holding space, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's also like the storytelling aspect. And part of the power of writing is creating a little bit of distance between you and your story, like in a healthy
Mm-hmm.
way, and being able to have, compassion for yourself or whatever it is that you went through, but with this little bit of space and distance. And
Mm.
that's why writing is so powerful. And that's why I love combining the writing and the coaching, because it's like a magical combination. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think probably why we're both drawn to sharing stories, I imagine, is that when we start to get it out of our head and out of our bodies, it becomes less scary, less awful. Like the things that we've been holding on to, when we can actually give them words and we can speak them or we can write them, it starts to allow whatever happened to kind of heal on its own way. And it's really, really scary to do that for the first time or few times. But I think when you can have somebody to hold space for you, and to let you know that it's okay, whatever's coming up, anger or fear or frustration or anxiety or whatever that is, that it's okay. And I think the more you can speak it, the more you can write it, the more you can share it, you kind of take away that shame and that fear that sits with that story that we've been kind of hiding and holding on to. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what's next for you? Are you going to continue to have more of these workshops? Is there a book
Ew.
being worked on?
Yeah, I have all sorts of things in the works. Right now I'm really focusing heavily on the workshop. I'm really trying to just get it to as many nurses as possible. I really just want to. So like I had a coach who made me write my BHAG. Have you ever heard of a BHAG?
Yes, big, hairy,
Big
audacious
hair.
goal.
Yeah, so this was like a new term for me. So I had to come up with my own, and mine is to inspire a million people to tell their story.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Very
Yeah. And I
cool.
really think that starts with nurses and with this workshop and with helping people self-express and helping people unlock those stories, heal those
Mm-hmm.
stories, process them. So that's really where I'm focusing heavily. Very much a podcast is on my radar. That was like the OG dream. Like that's really something that I really want to make happen within the year. So
Cool.
I'm going public. I'm saying that.
I
But
love
yeah, I'm
it.
really, yeah, working on that. So yeah. And a book, definitely, that's also always kind of something I'm kind of working on in the background, even if it's just exercises or accessing memories or just kind
Mm-hmm.
of that preliminary work that before because you don't always know what your book is going to be about. So, Elizabeth
Oh,
Gilbert says, we don't choose our stories choose us. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that book would look like or what that story would be, but that's definitely something I'm exploring. So
that
yeah.
is pretty cool. And I have heard her say that now that you say it out loud, but I think I don't know if I would be okay with that. I
I
think
know it's a
that's
scary
part of the
thought, right?
process, right? To just see what comes up. So that in itself would be probably a very therapeutic process to just work through with like what's coming up and what needs to be shared and told and how does that happen when you're like I'm, so used to holding on tightly to control. It's just that letting go of that process of
Yes,
seeing what
yes.
happens. Ooh,
Yes.
that's exciting.
I always say in my workshop, I say writing is this perfect balance between surrender and discipline. Because it's
Mm,
like you need the discipline, you got to show up. Like the story's not going to come if you're not in front of your computer typing. Like, sorry, there's no way around that. But there is a surrender to the process that happens. And, this is when we talk about flow, getting into flow state, allowing, and then you can get real woo and real spiritual, which Julia Cameron
yes.
does in the book, which is part of why I
Okay.
love the book, because she doesn't shy away from the spiritual, but she talks about how creative flow goes through us. And
Yes.
that's why when you're doing your morning pages, you're clearing the pipes, you're allowing
Ah,
that flow to come through you, because most of us can't be creative because we're literally thinking about our to-do list or scrolling on Instagram or doing the shopping list. Like we have so much on our mind that we can't even allow that creativity to flow. And so the morning pages is like a clearing of the pipes. You do it every day, and then you start to just naturally notice that you're more creative.
I
Yeah.
love that. Very cool. Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I'm curious if we can give a couple takeaways for a nurse who maybe struggled through the pandemic with some tough things, or just life in general is having a hard time and is maybe curious about getting started with journaling or writing, but maybe isn't quite ready to take on a book, Julia's book, or your workshop. What would be a couple of tangible things they could walk away with today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I always say just write, like just write. That can be, and again, make it as simple as possible, make it as easy as possible. Most of us have an empty notebook lying around, just pick it up and write. And if you're scared that somebody's going to find your notebook or
Mm-hmm.
burn it, throw it out, it doesn't matter. Like whatever it takes to make you feel safe to put
Mm,
your thoughts on paper and just sit down every day and write. Um,
awesome.
yeah. And then I guess I would also just say, like, for nurses that have been through the pandemic and I think are just now starting to like process what happened these last few years, to just trust your voice, trust your intuition. If there's something that you really want to say it. I mean, maybe the worst case scenario will happen, maybe not, but it's better than kind of not speaking your truth is more painful. And
Right.
so just yeah, speak your truth and listen to your gut. And yeah, we've been through a lot these last few years. So yeah,
We have been, and I don't think it's over. And that
no.
it hurts my heart. I work in a hospital still, and to just be there. We always, we kept saying, okay, once the pandemic's over, things will get back to normal. Once it's over, we'll get back to normal. And I think we're finally starting to accept that things are just different. And so we have to figure out how to adapt to that and how things have just changed. And that unfortunately is the way it is. And so I love that the writing is a way to kind of, we got to process that. We got to work through the trauma and crud that we're still holding on to so that we can figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Anything else you want to share with our friends before we sign off for today?
um I cannot think of anything. I feel complete. This was really
Awesome.
fun. Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was really, really fun.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, especially your backstory and the work you're doing. I know you're going to impact a million people. That's pretty dang awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jen.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.